Hello humans. Hello, let's close the crud. Hello humans, 3rd of September, starting to get cold. And this is about asymmetric woo, or asymmetry. Okay, so we know from our language studies that all kinds of Indo-European languages go all the way back to Sanskrit. And many of the techniques, syntactical or otherwise, used in Sanskrit, in spite of the fact that it is a different alphabet, translate over into the Indo-European. And so all the way down into English. So we have symmetry, which is evenly balanced, you know, the same on each side, right? And then we have asymmetry. And so we have symmetry, right? Then we have asymmetry. The A is a form of negation, meaning not symmetrical, not symmetry, or only one instead of the equal pair kind of thing, right? Uneven, unequal in some way. And this we see this typically in words that have A ahead of them within English. So atypical, meaning unusual, not typical, you know, that sort of thing, right? And you can do it with all kinds of English nouns. It doesn't work with nouns beginning with vowels, right? so a aardvark just doesn't cut it. so you can't do that, right? And it's a descriptor. It's not typically used on things like adverbs and so on. But in any event, so as I know from my examination of magnetism, all of universe is symmetric. It is typically asymmetric, but atypically there are times when it is symmetric, just to blow our minds probably. But most of universe is asymmetric, and we see this from the shape of the form of magnetism that's the attractive versus the repulsive, and the difference in height and so on. So if you want to go look at the Wooble on either YouTube or on BitChute video I did, it'll explain all of this kind of crap here. And the asymmetry expresses itself from the continuous and continual creation destruction that is universe. We just keep getting 22 trillion times a second we're created and destroyed as matter. And we use the lack of a solidity, having it be constant, to allow for motion and energy in the material. This puts asymmetry at the baseline. The asymmetry arises from the magnetism that gloms all of the universe back together, and the same force, antipolar, cyclical to it, that destroys all of universe 22 trillion times a second. Boom, 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 boom. So fast we cannot conceive it. That pulse creates impulse within the materium that drives everything from the growth of our hair to the blood being pumped to the lymph floating in the eyes that allow you to see, to the ability of the receptors to pick up on the photons, to the ability of the neurons to interconnect and flash, causing thought and insight and emotional connection and meaning in life. And so, and even act in essence as a feedback system to spirit. Okay, so life is matter, solid stuff, you know, hard little bits of seeming atoms, animated. What animates it? Well, spirit, whatever you want to call it, you know, ki, chi, prana, anime, you know, spirit, all different kinds of words for the same thing, right? For human energy, life force. That life force, if whatever we want to call it, consciousness, any of that, whatever word you apply to it, within matter moves because of asymmetry. It flows and it is able to move matter because of the asymmetry within the material universe. And everything works on asymmetry. So asymmetry permeates our universe even in digital form. Because just now I'm making this video, and on a grand meta level there's going to be the asymmetry of me making it, and then time passes and other people view it. And so a vast quantity of time could pass and I would die, and other people could still potentially view this video. And there's the temporal asymmetry. But temporal asymmetries go all the way down to the mega level, or the micro level within the network, the PC, and so on, with even the latency and concurrency issues of getting this video streamed out to you, whether it was live stream or recorded or whatever. It doesn't make any difference. And so we see that asymmetry dominates. Asymmetry of a necessity forms duality. Okay, a symmetrical universe would have no need for duality. A symmetrical universe could not, a symmetrical materium could not manifest movement. You know, it would be a different kind of a thing. It would not be as we are now. And so all of our universe is asymmetric. You need, in first principles thinking, there's a number of these first principles that are lined up that you can apply to your thinking in any given problem that you're going to face, anything you're going to noodle on and gnaw on to try and get some kind of meaning or decision stuff out of. And asymmetry, the understanding of how asymmetry affects all situations. All emotional interactions with people are asymmetric. They're not equal. They're not even. They never will be. They never can be. It's going to depend, you know, your ability to emotionally emote or receive is going to depend on that, the health of your body, the effectiveness of your mind, all of this kind of stuff on a minute by minute by minute by minute basis. And so you will never ever be 100% in agreement, symmetrical with any other person or group of people or so on. And in fact, this is what makes interpersonal reactions meaningful to us, is that asymmetry. And it makes them fun, it makes them unpleasant, it makes them it provides all of the descriptors that we would like to apply to an emotional relationship with another human, all derived from our asymmetric responses with other humans as we go forward. Because we are not symmetrical beings. We are asymmetric in all of our body. And you know, if you want to go down to the micro minutia of it all, you'll find that, you know, none of the fingers are not the same, and so on, all the way through. So there's this element of asymmetry that permeates universe, which universe is all of human experience. Every fucking human that's ever lived or ever will live is going to contribute equally to universe, because universe is the collective, the sum total of all human experience. When we have experience of aliens, with aliens, we will have a human perspective on aliens that will be incorporated into our universe. But their perspective on us will not necessarily come in unless that is somehow communicated to us, because universe is a description of the entire sum of human experience throughout all of time. Now the materium where we're actually operating, okay, that is 100% asymmetric. The universe, our sum total of all of our knowledge and so forth, will always be unsymmetric, asymmetric. It will be symmetrically counterbalanced to life on Earth. Okay, so this is an energetic kind of an understanding. So if we think about it, no matter what the population of Earth at any given time, it is asymmetric for the total of our species to that point. So if we were to balance them, are there more people alive now, or as many people alive now as has there been alive in all of history? No, it'll never happen that will ever be equal. And so we will never have an energetic balance, an energetic symmetry of our creation of experience now with experience that's already within universe. This being the case, the nature of humans in their reaction to universe will always be expected to be asymmetric to any given measurement. So we won't find continuity or ubiquity among humanity. So you'll never get all humans to take a vaccine. Doesn't matter what the conditions are and so on. Not all humans will ever get the same illness. We may all die because the planet gets destroyed. That kind of thing could happen. But in there would be symmetry within humanity. But in this particular, or in every other case, we're going to have an asymmetric response to almost everything that's ever going to be presented to us. And this is the core of life, which is to examine with your poor asymmetric, with your primo superb asymmetric brain functioning with all of the neurons and stuff as best as it can, and then your poorly trained and poorly educated asymmetric mind that operates and interconnects with that brain, examining the nature of your decision points at any given time in your life here, in our lives. And here we are at a point where we are seemingly approaching an asymmetry with a very extra weighting on all aspects of life. So, as they were saying, this is the new normal. Well, we're redefining normal, but because of all the chaos around us. But we are basically finding ourselves in very much an asymmetric position relative to our old lives. So I'm in a very much more asymmetric position than a lot of people, right? So my life extends out like 68 years, right? And I've only had these last 2 years involved in this chaos. So most of the weight of my life had been in what we would call normality. Now that normality, for me, of course, supersedes these last 2 years, and I can see these last 2 years with some real clarity. People that are less long in years will have less weighting versus these last 2 years, and then all those kids are going to think this is normal, or this is usual, or whatever. They'll know it's not quite normal and everybody's all freaked out, but they don't know that the world shouldn't operate that way, right? And so here we are in a position where we have asymmetry popping up all over. And this asymmetry is being used as a tool. I don't know if the powers that be actually use asymmetry, if they're aware of it, at the level that I am, and how it is can be used as an examination tool, but also a tool for particular ends. They're trying to break down our social order. We know that they're really afraid of all these people living through a monetary breakdown, because then it shows the debt-based debt slavery system, however we want to say it, in sharp relief, and that we'll all go out and grab the bankers and the politicians and hang them, on a lamppost or whatever is convenient for destroying all of our lives. Now they're having to destroy our lives, basically, in their minds, to protect themselves from our lives being destroyed by stuff that is going to happen anyway, ultimately, because of shit that they had done over these past 100 plus years, right, with the monetary system and so on. And it all comes down to that. It comes down to money and power. And at some point, if you have enough money, then you can turn it into power, and it's not, you don't care about the individual dollars or the digits denoting your wealth. You just have these streams of money that come on into you, and then you become one of these super ultra ultra-rich guys, and you go on these big fucking power trips. Apparently that's the way that the universe is working here. Now, I think all these ultra-rich guys and the whole money system is the whole financial system, the fiat money, the central banks, all of that. I think all of that is an external that's been laid on humanity, that was put on us by the bug, right? By the space bug that's up there capturing the minds of the elite with telepathic bug rays. Anyway, so it doesn't matter what the cause is. We see that this is global. We see that the same shit's happening everywhere. The same bogus crap is happening everywhere. The central banks are behind it everywhere. And if you don't have a central bank in your country, they have the central banks that are in other countries, have those countries go bomb the shit out of you until they can come on in and set up a central bank. And so, you know, the very first thing that's going to happen with the Taliban is they're going to set up their own central bank, and they're fucked thereafter. So here we are at this particular point where we're getting into the asymmetry of things showing up in sharp relief. So we're going to see this asymmetry heightened by events over these next 3 or 4 weeks. And, you know, it'll go on longer, but I mean the asymmetry point will be made in these next 3 or 4 weeks. So the powers that be have to use the media to make everyone think that the radical fringe is as large as the mass of normies. They're portraying symmetry as existing, that all the Antifa and the BLM guys are as massive as the normies, right, which isn't the case. Or that the Biden voters, you know, match the Trump voters, or outdid them. No, isn't the case. So they're attempting to change the relationship, the ratio in your mind for all of these aspects of reality through their engineering a form of symmetry, where they're pumping up all of the words of the left and all of the screams of all of the Karens and all of this kind of stuff in the cancel culture in order to make you think that it's pervasive. And that's not the case, right? So they're altering these symmetrical balances. And the symmetrical balance normally is a very much asymmetric rating. The petrodollar is dying, has died officially, I guess, or whatever you want to say. It's bleeding out real quick. Doesn't mean the American dollar is going to go away. It's going to be a really weird world. We're entering into asymmetry exposed in a great degree in anything that we want to look at because of the woo, right? So we had the paradigm. The woo is just nothing but asymmetric. You just don't know up from down, you know, left from right, all of that kind of stuff, right? And the paradigm structured by the powers that be that has taken us over and brought us to this point over these past 100 plus years, 150 years, going back to 1871, has brought us up to this point here. That paradigm is breaking down. That structured spaceship or temporal ship through time that they had created is cracking, and it's no longer in existence. And we're seeing all of the results of that. We're seeing that we're at a point of peak paradigm, and where they brought up everything. You know, they have got everything running on their paradigm that they can at the moment. And this includes, you know, the Biden fiascos, China, the COVID, the vaccines, the vaccine passports, the fascism, the censorship, you know, the death camps, the quarantine camps, the FEMA camps. All of these things are all popping up all right now because we're at a point in this energetic shift where there's much more energy pouring in, and things were going to change anyway. And the powers that be decided that, well, they wanted to maintain their power basically through force and deception. And in order to do that, they had to be stomping on it really, really, really hard now, kill off as many of the humans as they possibly could, reduce the overall expansive pressure into universe, right? So they're reducing the carbon footprint, so to speak, of all of our minds putting out information into universe, which is the collective total sum of everybody's input and everybody's experience in life. And so the powers that be are trying to ramp down. Now, I think they're doing this on the behalf of other life forms that have these guys, fucked in the brains. But I'm squirrely, so we can just kind of let that pass and say we observe they're doing it. Why they're doing it is not particularly pertinent. And if the bald guy thinks it's a giant space bug, who cares? Because we see them doing it, right? We see Bill Gates going out there and saying, let's kill off, a couple of billion people in a depopulation agenda. And then a few years later, he gets involved in vaccines, and here we are now, he's involved in the production of them and owns all of this shit, and he's deep into all of this stuff. So why would you take a vaccine or any product into your body from someone who wants to kill humans, who said that it's his goal to reduce humanity? And we know all these elitists have this depopulation thing, the Georgia Guidestones, all of that kind of crap, right? And now we see that they're destroying the healthcare system through vaccine mandates and all of this. Even though today the CDC had to come on out and admit that 80% of the population in the U.S. has now got some level of COVID immunity, either because of a vaccine or because of natural immunity. Ergo, we've passed the point of herd immunity and should no longer even give a shit about vaccines. Also, they're having to say that the COVID is less than half as lethal as they thought it was, because twice as many people had caught it and they didn't even know about it, right? And so basically all of the people in the United States have been exposed, they've caught it or not. If they're not going to catch it, they're not going to catch it. If you have comorbidities, you're ending up in the hospital because the exposure to the bioweapon, and it exists, there really is a virus. But you're ending up in the hospital because of the comorbidities, because of the obesity, because of the diabetes, because of the sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, lack of vitamins, et cetera, et cetera. Or you're ending up in the hospital now because you've taken a shot which has totally fucked over your immune system and brought spike protein, the part of the virus that is deadly, into your body in the form of an injection, deliberately to kill you on the part of some person somewhere way up at the top of the chain that engineered all of this. And that's basically our structure of the asymmetric world. And so there's still, in spite of the fact that we have meaningful levels of capitulation on the part of the science, that is to say that we're at points where the CDC says, oh geez, it's half as deadly as we thought it was, and it wasn't that deadly to begin with. But basically it's a seasonal flu. And then also now there's other documents and people discussing the fact that we're going to have to live with it. We're now at that point where it isn't going to change, we can't get rid of it, there's no point in masks, you're not going to be able to control the spread, it's everywhere, so why the fuck care, right? It's everywhere, why the fuck care? Anyway, so we're at that point asymmetrically. But they're still going to be pushing the vax mandates as hard as they can, as long as they can, because their goal is to kill people with the vax, and it's not about your health. It's about their Nazi control thing, right? Hang on a second. Anyway, so they're going to keep going on with that. The petrodollar's dead, so their structure is dying, so their structure is dying, and they know it. That's going to really freak them out. The banking system is going to really start getting into its hiccup period, hiccups and upchucks and explosions and implosions and breaking relationships and all of this kind of stuff. And so all that stuff's going to be going on. Now, in this asymmetry of these current times, that is to say September and October and November, we're going to see the powers that be have predictable asymmetric responses to stuff. All right, so they need to control the news cycle to keep what little tiny fractional amount of legitimacy still clings to the Bidenistas, to the communists, to the deep state itself, in place, they're going to have to control that news cycle to the point where they have to respond asymmetrically to the threat. So if so we know that, you know, that Trump won, right? This is known. So let's just say that it's known by so many people that the emotional value of it at this point right here, you know, in time coming out due to the audit is so this is how many people know right now that they voted for Trump and Trump actually won. When the audit comes on out, it's going to raise that emotional level up to about here because of all the other people that will now know about it, right? But the powers that be are thinking that in order for them to dominate this, they've got to have an emotional response level that goes way the fuck up here with their news cycle control. So they're gonna try and shoot for something like way the hell up. They're gonna have to overreact with their efforts to try and dominate the news cycle. As soon as the news cycle breaks, their control breaks 100%, and then they've totally lost and will be. You know, as I say, we'll be getting close to that point where they'll be hunted down. We know now that they can't travel in the streets. You see the wonderful videos of Trudeau being shouted off of platforms and shouted out of the public by Canadians standing up and yelling, "Piece of shit, piece of shit, piece of shit," which he is. Now, the next stage is going to be like Antifa. They'll be flinging balloons filled with shit. You know, probably not the Canadians, but they're too polite. You know, French farmers, hey, they know how to do it. They get the machines and they really shovel that shit into the... you gotta love, my relatives are French. they're ornery and but they're nice guys. I like them. Anyway, so here we are in the asymmetry of everything, all right? So you're gonna have a lot of problems popping up over this next month. Not the least, apparently, is going to be is by way of reports from remote viewers of potential mushroom cloud. Now, mushroom cloud can just be a big chemical explosion, right? So mushroom cloud is not necessarily nuclear. It's not necessarily mass death. They didn't see a nuclear exchange with many mushroom clouds, so we can eliminate the idea of that kind of a nuclear war sort of thing in their viewing. They saw some of them had more exaggerated impressions of it, and some indeed included EMPs, which would imply nuclear, all right? Because it's going to be awful hard to have a conventional explosion other than those big mother of all bombs, right? Those things do cause EMP reactions because of the casing. My understanding, I don't know for a fact, but it's my understanding of the engineering that there is a non-nuclear level, but there is an EMP blast as a result of those. But in any event, remote viewers all over are seeing this mushroom cloud showing up sometime in September. As I say, it could be a commercial or an industrial blast, could be a refinery or something like that blowing up, huge chemical explosion, or it could be a nuclear explosion kind of thing, because of the one that had said that there was an EMP. We don't have any, as far as I know, there's no locations, no probabilities, any of this sort of thing. But, and I'm not particularly preparing for that. However, it made me think of a few things. And so I'm in the process of gathering replacements for those items that are, upon which I'm dependent, that have chips in them. So if I can buy it, so, you know, the controller for a car, that kind of thing. And I'm not really worried that much about the vehicles, but the idea is that, you know, these chips are going to be hard to come by over these next few years as we get into the this active, dynamic part of devolution. In that, we're going to have the asymmetry really pop up because the deep state, bear in mind now, the deep state has been in place, from my thinking, before 1871, and they made a big move in 1871 through Michelson with the experiments for measuring the speed of light. And then, so they've been there since at least the 1871s, because I see their footprint there in the things that they were doing. So the deep state had been in existence for several hundred years, likely up to that point, but because there's sort of hints. But they've certainly been there since for the last 150 years, and that means that they're the incumbent in a political sense. They're the entrenched power in a military sense, and so those roles put a mental position on them in terms of a mental constraint on them, and so we can expect them to respond in particular ways. And as a result of that, we can expect that there might indeed be a false flag of a mega nature in which they would pop off a small tactical nuke in order to scare the shit out of everybody. We know that the plan was for World War III to be nuclear, to be under the control of Hillary Clinton when she was El Presidente, and that she would take us into World War III, which we would lose, and then we would be occupied, and then the disease would come out, the COVID, right, which we're having to have that now. And so their plans have been all thrown out of kilter, and they're having to try and recover. And so, as I say, it's within the bounds of probability. I don't have any potential for it. There's no way to assign a value for it in reality, but it is within the bounds of probability that we face now, that in the month of September, or shortly thereafter, as seen by the remote viewers, there might be the release of a small tactical nuke or something. But as I say, they haven't viewed any large war with nukes. None of that's shown up. As far as I can see, it was an incident, which can imply so much, which we could speculate on so many different avenues for where it would occur. And that's kind of like, well, unless you're right there and you can say that, all right, so I'm at the point of the most likely place for this thing to go off, and you knew that, there's no point to reacting in the sense of moving away or trying to get a bug out or any of that kind of shit, because we're not certain it will happen. We're not certain how large of anything would happen, nor are we certain of any aspect of it other than the remote viewers had seen it. Yet another aspect of asymmetry. So we have to make a decision based on the asymmetry of the situation. There's not an equal, basically some of the remote viewers are better than others. They've got a good track record, but it's never 100%. So you got to make decisions on all of this. Just the same way with the vaccine companies, right? They don't really know what they're doing. They only think they know the science. We're just at the very beginning of it. They've had a terrible track record. They've killed lots and lots and lots of people with it. So, they don't really know what they're doing with it, in spite of all their protestations to say that they do. Now, I'm not saying the remote viewers are not accurate, right? I know that Dick Allgaier is spookily accurate. He's like, it kind of freaks me out. But so he's really good. So these remote viewing teams do have methodology. They do have method and feedback loops and engineering involved in their process, and they are reasonably accurate as long as you're not talking bizarre things like crypto prices, right? And so it makes sense to think that the powers that be, especially in these days, might actually pop off a tactical nuke, and in which case, well, that's yet more reason to prepare, to have extra food and so on. We know the supply chains are being disrupted. We know they're paying farmers to destroy food. We know that the fascism crackdown in Australia is coming to the U.S. and England and Europe. And they're just going to keep rolling this and keep rolling this and keep rolling this, in spite of the fact that there's an asymmetric response from the populace, because we are growing in the number of awake humans, and the number of awake humans are not taking this shit, and we're pushing back in a myriad of ways which they had not anticipated, and they're having to play catch up on all of it, and they're losing their main weapon, which is the weaponized news cycle. Once the weaponized news cycle falls, then humanity starts in freedom, because then everything will bust out of the woo, and there won't be such a thing as a mind-controlled normies for long. They'll start freaking out as everything no longer makes sense. There's no longer a central narrative, etc. And so they'll cast around for something and latch on to something and start pulling themselves into some other structure which will not be the old narrative. And so they'll have been awakened to some degree, and then things start changing very rapidly from there. And we're right at that point now. So we've got to get through these next few months. Here in the USA, we're going to get a very dynamic over the September, October, November, and into December. And then next year, we have a very positive beginning to 2022. In spite of all the other crud that's going on, in spite of all the other problems, with the vax and all of this sort of thing. I have to go on out and start doing work now. So here's the thing, they're still going to push on the vax and the healthcare. Their ability to support vax mandates scientifically is failing by the minute, just from officialdom itself. That don't count on that to stop the vax mandates from your employer and stuff, so you're going to have to fight back. And you're going to basically have to tell your employer, I'm prepared to quit and I'm prepared to sue you. What are you prepared to do? Are you prepared to fire me? Are you prepared to be sued? They're going to have regular form letters to dismiss things like religious exemptions and all of that, because the point of the powers that be is to kill you with these vaccines, to get rid of you over these next 2 years by giving you injections until you die. So understand that. You have to quit your job if they're absolutely going to say you can't come here if you're not vaxxed, right? And on the other hand, if they're going to say, oh, well, you've got another alternative, we can just make your life hell and you can get tested twice a week, then make them provide you with a test. The antigen test is not that. These quick, easy test is not a real test. And make them provide you with a test that shows a proven accuracy. That is, that they can say this test has been assayed in a lab against a known sample of COVID antibodies and or COVID, and can thus be relied upon to provide us surety of results. Because basically you're going to say this. And the other thing is that when you tell them that, I will happily be tested if you can provide me with a test that can be shown to be accurate by any laboratory measure of accuracy, any third-party laboratory. And so that can prove that this test is accurate. And then tell them, on the other hand, here's your problem. Put it to them this way, to your employer. Tell them, here is your problem. I will happily take the test, and then if your fake test, in my opinion, the antigen test or the PCR, if those tests show me positive, then I will demand that you prove those tests positive. If you take any action based on these two tests, then I will sue you for fraud. I will sue you for fucking with my employment rights on a fraudulent basis, because I know these two tests to be inaccurate and not plausible. And then we'll just end up in court all over again, only now, under those circumstances, I will have you by the short gnarlies, because you cannot prove these tests are accurate. And so there they are. And if you just take that stance and hold it, they may indeed fire you. But if you've done all of this, then you have, assuming we can get a legal system to work and be accurate and operate, then you have a very solid legal basis for going back at them on this. And believe me, in this case, we're already seeing it now. And so you can be rest assured that there will be a vast amount of need for workers, a huge amount of need for people to work. We're in the cusp, not at it, we are in the cusp of an event like the Black Death in Europe, where half of the male serfs died of the disease, and thereafter anyone that was able-bodied could basically name their rate and could move around freely, because other landowners would do anything they could to get more workers, right? So we're getting at that point because of what's happening now. So in Ireland and Israel are two of the most vaccinated countries on the planet. Both of them are having giant surges of COVID, and it is not in the unvaccinated, even though they're saying that that's the case. And it is not COVID, in my opinion. It is the result of the vaccine that is causing this. And so if I'm accurate, this will spread to all of the other countries where we have high vaccination rates. If I'm accurate on this, we will have a giant, huge deflationary event across all of the Western world as the central banks collapse as a result of what's going to be going on. In this collapse, we can expect throughout this period of time to have things like real estate markets collapse as lots and lots of houses just have people die and there's no bid on them. No one wants to buy them after that, simply because there aren't enough people trying to buy houses or move or any of that sort of thing. We're already seeing indications of that. So I have people that are drive aid cars, EMTs, ambulances, that sort of thing. They have different names for them in different places. And they're telling me that the one guy says that since the vax has come out and has really been effective in his area, and he's in a big urban area, but I'm not going to say where, every single shift, he works evening shift, every single shift he's hauling out they're sent at least to one, and sometimes more than one, apartment where there's been no response from a tenant for over 4 days. And these are people that have been vaxxed, and he says they're finding them just dead on their, in a bathtub or sitting at the kitchen table or lying in bed or whatever. And he said it's not just old people. And he says that's what's really freaking him out, is it's not just old people. And what got them too was that he's EMT guy, a medical tech, and wherever he's at, the drivers are not necessarily EMTs, and he mentioned that they had to get a new driver because one of their drivers, who was vaxxed, didn't show up for work and hasn't been back for several weeks, and this was the guy that routinely drove for them. So they don't know what's going on there. But this is the general state of affairs that we're going to be getting into. Hospitals are breaking down because nurses are quitting because they don't want to get polluted by the vaccine. The whole system is going to crumble like this, and then we'll have to rebuild it. So we're going into the crumbling period. Hopefully, we'll be at the edge of the rebuilding period in January or so. And we'll start rebuilding somewhat from there. It'll take us a number of years because, bear in mind, we're going to have to replace the power structure and all of the paradigm that's been in existence for these 150 years. So we have a shitload of work. So unfortunately, all of us guys that are alive now are unvaxxed and are healthy in an asymmetric fashion have to clean up the mess for all of fucking humanity here in the Western world for these last 150 years. I'm not too pleased about it, you can see. I'm a little bit irritated. I've got enough cleaning to do on my own. I don't need all these other people's. I joke about it because you have to, otherwise you're going to go crazy with grief and kill yourself. We're going to have a terrible, terrible thing to go through. All this stuff is based on fiat money. It's all going to crumble. In my opinion, the vaxxed people are going to be dropping and going down so fast over the course of this winter. It won't do Australia much good because they're going into their summer season. But look, Israel and Ireland are having vast COVID blooms, peak COVID experiences, even in their summers, right? So the vax is what's doing it. It's no longer a seasonal respiratory issue. But in my opinion, we're going to get to the point where very rapidly, probably January, February, March, April, something like that, where we'll all be able to say, okay, the breakdowns happen enough that we're no longer even dealing with the fiat currency. We may have gone into, because the central banks will be imploding because of the breakdown of the petrodollar and all this kind of thing. There'll still be a financial effort to keep a financial system going, but it'll be much more of an economy at that stage because we won't have supply chains, we won't have just-in-time supply chains, we won't have the banking system, and we will be in that period of time where we start building out on sci-fi world. So these are the dangerous times, right? Asymmetrically, this is the best of times, but it's also the worst of times. It's the best of times because we have so much potential and hope, but it's the worst of times because there's going to be so much misery for us to get through to get to that hope, right? And it's the worst of times because of all of the things that we know, and then it's the best of times because of the potential and because of the fact that so many people are waking up and that there is so much change occurring right now. And in this period of asymmetric woo, which we could think of it in a way as the over-woo actually really starting to become visible to all of the normies. It's risen up high enough that it's approaching a zenith. And when we see the maximum over-woo, then we know that we're on the good side of things, right? That we don't have to worry about the over-woo anymore, and we can start creating what we want out of it. So it's very much like the Taoists say that, you can't see the top of the mountain unless you're at the bottom of the valley. So, you can be on the top of the mountain, but you can't see it, right? And so you can't examine the depth of the valley except best from the top of the mountain. And you've got to get to the point of understanding that in the course of change starts multiplying, and then you can get to the point where change becomes so continuous and constant that it is the new normal, and you don't worry about the framework and the paradigm that had been constructed to keep you immune from the changes and to freeze reality in this particular symmetric view that they had. And so we're at the point now of rising over woo to peak, and we're also at the point of rising visible asymmetry in all of the relationships relative to the woo and those that would try and control it within the paradigm. So this is the point of our most danger. So they're going to try all different kinds of things. This is why I'm constantly saying, if you see an advert that says, let's go out and they're going to do this. So bear in mind, so they'll try this. Let's go out and protest down here on the waterfront all of these vaccine passports and mandates here in New York City. Okay, so, and they're going to try and get a big crowd. It's on a particular day, and they have times and all of this kind of thing, right? Probably not a good idea to go. Be very careful in this period of time, because what they're going to do, the powers that be are going to, they're not getting the big traction they expected off of the Trumpers as being terrorists and that sort of thing. They're still trying it, but it's just not taking. So now what they're going to try and do is to hit hit everybody with the anti-vax terrorists. And so it won't be political terrorists, it'll be medical terrorists, right? Medical freedom fighters. And so that's what they're going to try and do, is they're going to try and make the riots and stuff occur wherever the fuck they can in order to pump the news cycle. As that fails, they may get to the point where they decide, okay, we got to use a tactical nuke to escalate this, because all that information about the audits is coming out, and there's crowds now gathering around Tyler City, or the White House down in Alabama, or wherever the fuck it is, Atlanta, or wherever it is, that Tyler Studios made, right? And just keeping Biden and all the others trapped in that fake White House, and they can't get out because too many people are there looking at them. And we can't have this, and and the police aren't even showing up for work, and all this kind of stuff. All this kind of stuff's happening, and so at that point, that would make sense. So what I wanted to say was, I don't know if the remote viewers are accurate. We won't know until we get through the period of time that they've viewed as to whether that accuracy existed in any degree. But if you do see that kind of a mushroom cloud event, with the exception of a commercial like fertilizer factory or something like that blowing up, if it's that, it won't count this way. But if the powers that be actually do set off a tactical nuke, do try and cause some kind of a war and escalate it to that level, then you can be sure that we are at the point of their peak ability to respond, that they're already so weak that that's all they can do, and they're starting to fail. And so you can also be assured that at that point, I would take it as being quite right that sometime before the end of January, we will get into this positive turnaround, because we'll be only a few months away from January, and if you have have them doing that level of energetic response, it shows how weak they are within the context of our current global struggle. And then it's going to just be fascinating in sci-fi world, without all of the power structures, without all of the defined political understandings, and all of this shit being pumped out of the mainstream media, you know, all of the CRT crap and all of their you know, intersectionality shit. All of that will just go away. Without it, the powers that be pumping it, it will die because it was never organic to begin with. And then we'll see what humans are really like. So universe, that is to say our sum total of experience, is going to be asymmetric, because who knows how long the powers that be have been working to get up to this point that we're at now. And they're going to crash and burn, and thereafter humanity will be able to re-examine itself free of them and clear. And so from that point on, for however long we last, without another mind parasites settling on us like the powers that be, we will be a free species examining ourselves in this reality. And who knows what the fuck we can do. I'm really excited. You know, the mind constraints of these people, of their academia and all of this stuff, are so limiting in our ability to view the materium and this kind of stuff, that I am certain that absolutely positive that we're going to do a shitload better without them. And in fact, I got to go and do some of that. I got to go do work and stuff. Anyway, be careful. Don't go out and join anything where it's going to be a contest and you're going to win stupid prizes. There could be a lot of opportunities. So be very careful now. It's the worst of times. It's the best of times. It's also the most dangerous of times.